A bitter wind cut through the narrow streets, carrying whispers of rebellion that no one dared voice aloud. Shadows twisted across cobblestones as a girl darted between lantern-lit alleys, her boots splashing in puddles that mirrored the stormy sky. Every glance from passing nobles felt like a dagger, every echo of a guard's whistle a countdown to capture. She carried no sword, no shield, only her defiance and a heart pounding with reckless determination. Somewhere in the labyrinth of stone and fog, a secret waited, pulsing with dark promise, and she knew that if she hesitated even a moment, it would vanish forever. Rules were made to protect, they said, but sometimes to survive, to save, to become more than what the world demanded, rules had to be broken. Rain-soaked rooftops glimmered in the fleeting torchlight, and every shadow seemed to watch her as if the city itself were alive with judgment. She moved silently, every footstep a question of courage, and every heartbeat a defiance of fear. The kingdom's rules were etched into the stone walls, etched into faces that would never forgive her, and yet she pressed forward, drawn toward a distant flicker of something forbidden. Something that whispered of power, of choice, of freedom no law could touch. In the hollow echo of a deserted plaza, she paused, knowing that the path she had chosen could never be walked backward. A sudden gust threw a swirl of autumn leaves around her, carrying a hint of smoke from distant rooftops. She could feel it before she saw it. A darkness coiling at the edge of vision, patient, watching, a predator disguised as shadow. Every instinct screamed to run, yet her body refused. Somewhere deep in the twisting alleys of the city, a spark of courage ignited, telling her that the kingdom's fear of her was nothing compared to the danger that now crept closer with every heartbeat. She stumbled into a hidden courtyard, the world shrinking to the walls around her. Flickering lanterns threw fractured light across carved stone, and in the silence, a voice older than the city itself murmured secrets she had no right to hear. Master Oren's gaze met hers across the mist, and in that instant, the rules that bound her dissolved, replaced by a truth that demanded action. To save what could never truly embrace her, she would have to break every law she had ever known. Her decision carved itself into the night air, silent but irreversible. She could feel the weight of every expectation, every law, every sneer of a kingdom that never accepted her. Yet, a spark of fire kindled in her chest, defiant and bright, and she knew with clarity that there would be no turning back. The girl who had always followed rules now stepped into a destiny shaped by daring, sacrifice, and the raw courage of a heart unbound. Beneath the crumbling arches of the old library, she traced her fingers along spines of forbidden tomes, the air thick with dust, and whispered secrets. Every page held danger. Spells that could bend the world, prophecies that could fracture kingdoms, knowledge meant to be locked away. Yet she could not stop. Her pulse raced with the thrill of discovery and the weight of responsibility. Every heartbeat reminded her that the kingdom had never wanted her, that she had never belonged. But in this hidden place, rules bent to the will of courage, and she began to feel, for the first time, that she could shape destiny itself. A soft footstep behind her made her spin. Lyora Selwyn, 17, cloaked in simple tunic and boots, blue eyes wary, golden hair falling over her shoulders, had followed her. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. But Lyra only smiled, a hint of rebellion sparking in her gaze. Knowledge could not be contained, and neither could she. Together or apart, they were venturing into a power the kingdom feared, a fire that refused to be tamed, and the first seeds of alliance and betrayal began to root themselves in shadowed corners. A tremor shook the stone floors as a shadow flickered along the edges of the torchlight. The wraith, a presence both formless and monstrous, slithered through walls and whispered in tongues that bent the mind. Elara's fingers itched with newfound power, and fear tangled with exhilaration. To face this darkness, she would have to break every rule, betray every expectation. And yet the kingdom's survival now rested on her courage. The girl who had been scorned might yet be the only savior they never wanted. Master Orin, 61, moved slowly toward her, robes whispering across the floor, eyes steady and knowing. Power is a choice, Ilara. Every rule you break comes with a price. His voice was gravel and calm, yet in it lay warning and encouragement intertwined. She nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. Each choice carved a path further from what the kingdom demanded and closer to a destiny no law could bind. By candlelight, Ilara traced sigils on parchment, a tremor of magic vibrating under her fingertips. Lyora, 17th, watched with a mixture of awe and fear, torn between loyalty and the safety rules promised. Outside, the night pressed against the tall windows, dark and silent, as if the kingdom itself held its breath. Ilara knew that the coming days would demand everything of her: defiance, cunning, sacrifice, and that once she stepped beyond the threshold of rules, there would be no return. The seeds of rebellion had been planted, and they would not wither. The kingdom's streets had never felt so alive, yet so hostile. Ilara moved with purpose, boots striking cobblestones, cloak billowing behind her. Rumors of her defiance spread like wildfire. The guards whispered her name. Merchants peeked from windows, and shadows seemed to follow her with intent. No longer hidden, she embraced the tension, the thrill of standing against a kingdom that had never wanted her. Every glance felt like challenge, and every heartbeat pulsed with the audacity of rebellion. The wraith still lingered at the edges of perception, a reminder that her courage would soon be tested in ways the kingdom could never imagine. Word reached the palace swiftly. King Thalandrovic, 46, sat atop the throne, fingers steepled, eyes narrowed with icy calculation. He had never understood her, had never trusted her. Yet even he could not ignore the storm she was stirring. A kingdom built on obedience now trembled before a girl it had scorned, and a dangerous game of power, perception, and pride began to unfold. Every choice she made could ignite chaos or hope, and every glance from the king felt like judgment sharpened into a blade. Ilara gathered allies in hidden corners, merchants, street urchins, scholars, anyone who had ever felt invisible. Lyora Selwyn, 17, stood beside her, hesitant but resolute, eyes flicking between fear and admiration. Together they whispered plans, drew maps of the kingdom's weak points, and tested small acts of defiance. The wraith's presence grew closer with each heartbeat, its shadow stretching into the alleys where courage sparked. For the first time, she felt the weight of leadership, and with it, the burden of responsibility that could tip the kingdom into salvation or ruin. The first public act of rebellion came suddenly. A torch flare illuminated the central plaza as Ilara defied the edict forbidding gatherings. She stood atop a fountain, cloak whipping in the wind, voice rising above the murmurs of the crowd. Fear rippled through the kingdom, but admiration glimmered in hidden eyes. The wraith stirred in response, unseen yet felt, as if acknowledging that her courage had disturbed the natural order. In that instant, rules were meaningless. Only the power of defiance mattered. That night, the palace trembled. King Thalandrovic, 46, summoned his council, furious at the girl who dared defy him openly. Outside, Ilara and Lyora, 17, planned the next step, knowing the kingdom's patience was gone. Each whispered plan, each cautious glance at shadowed corners, reminded them of the stakes. One mistake, and the wraith would exploit it, the kingdom would collapse, and all their courage might vanish. Yet, defiance had become necessity, and even fear could not sway her resolve. The streets she had once traversed with audacious pride now felt like a gauntlet of suspicion. Lyra Selwyn, 18, lingered at her side, eyes darting nervously as whispers of betrayal echoed from alleyways and rooftops. Even the allies they had gathered shifted uncertainly, loyalty strained by fear. Alara's green eyes hardened with determination. Every glance from those who doubted her only fueled the fire in her chest. She realized that defiance came with consequences, and the cost of survival was beginning to show its cruel face. The palace gates had never seemed so cold. King Thalandrovic, 47, loomed behind the heavy doors, expression carved from stone, while courtiers whispered of Alara's growing power. He had underestimated her, dismissed her, and now his fear coiled like a serpent around the throne. Orders to capture her were given, yet shadows lingered, hinting that the kingdom itself was on the verge of unraveling. Every wall, every whisper, every footstep reminded him that the girl who had been scorned had become an unstoppable force. Betrayal cut sharper than any blade. Lyra, 18, faced Alara with tears shimmering in her blue eyes. I can't follow this path, she whispered, torn between loyalty and fear of ruin. The moment fractured the fragile alliance, leaving Alara standing alone amid shadows. And whispered threats, rage, grief, and determination coalesced into a single unyielding resolve. The Wraith, sensing vulnerability, shifted closer, its form curling in the darkness like smoke tainted with crimson. She understood then that the kingdom had never truly protected her. But neither could she allow its collapse. The shadowed wraith struck with sudden ferocity, sweeping through the capital like a living storm. Windows shattered, market stalls collapsed, and screams echoed against stone walls. Alara, 19, pushed forward, weaving through chaos with unwavering focus. Magic flared from her fingertips, casting protective barriers, while those who had once doubted her fled or fell. The kingdom's indifference had left her unshielded, but now her courage became the shield no law or soldier could provide. Survival demanded audacity, and she would not hesitate. As dawn crept over the broken city, Alara stood amid the ruin, chest heaving, cloak torn, boots muddy. The streets bore the scars of both human fear and wraith's assault. Lyra, 18, lingered at the edge, guilt and admiration battling in her gaze. The kingdom had failed them, and yet Alara's defiance had saved what still could be saved. Victory came not from law or loyalty, but from courage, born of rejection. In the quiet aftermath, she knew that the trials ahead would demand even more, and that the kingdom's hatred would never vanish, no matter how many lives she saved. The night air hung heavy with sorrow as Alara moved through the silent ruins, her boots echoing across the broken cobblestones. Every flicker of torchlight revealed faces, etched with fear, gratitude, and suspicion. She clenched her fists, green eyes blazing, black cloak soaked and torn, heart heavy with the knowledge that victory had a cost. Every life spared carried the weight of those already lost, and she understood that the path she had chosen demanded sacrifices no law or kingdom could excuse. Courage, now intertwined with grief, shaping her into something greater and lonelier than she had ever been. Master Orin, 61, moved through the wreckage with deliberate calm, staff in hand, eyes filled with wisdom and sorrow. He had taught her that power came with a price, but he had never prepared her for the weight of personal loss. As the shadowed wraith surged toward a defenseless village on the outskirts, Orin stepped forward, chanting incantations older than stone, his body radiating protective energy. Alara's heart clenched, knowing what must happen, yet powerless to intervene without risking everything she had fought for. The wraith's shadow engulfed the square, and a piercing scream rent the air. Orin's form glowed, holding the darkness at bay, but his body faltered, ancient strength failing under immense pressure. Alara lunged to aid him, hands crackling with energy, yet she could not halt the inevitable. Master Orin, protector and mentor, fell beneath the shadow, leaving a void that seared through her chest. Grief collided with fury. The cost of courage became painfully real, and every law, every rule, every expectation shattered before her eyes. Silence fell like a shroud, broken only by distant cries and the murmur of the surviving villagers. Ilara rose slowly, body trembling, magic still humming faintly in her hands. The wraith had been driven back, but victory felt hollow. Every life saved had been paid for in blood, trust, and loyalty. She looked toward the horizon, cloak dripping, heart heavy, knowing that the kingdom's indifference and hatred would persist, yet understanding that she alone carried the spark capable of sustaining hope. Sacrifice had defined her, and she was no longer just a girl. They had all seen what courage demanded. Lyora Selwyn, 18, approached hesitantly, eyes filled with remorse and admiration, silent acknowledgement of all that had been lost. Ilara's gaze met hers, unwavering and resolute. No kingdom, no law, no ruler had ever welcomed her. Yet through heartbreak, betrayal, and sacrifice, she had become indispensable. The girl who had always followed rules had now become a force the kingdom could neither ignore nor control. And though the cost was immense, she understood that every life saved, every shadow pushed back, was worth defying everything they had ever demanded of her. The sky over the capital had turned an unnatural shade of crimson, thick clouds, swirling like a living storm. Ilara's green eyes burned with determination as she stood atop the palace battlements, black patched cloak whipping in the gale. The shadowed wraith stretched across the city like a black tide, its glowing crimson eyes fixed on her. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet she knew there was no retreat. This was the moment that would decide the fate of a kingdom that had never wanted her. Courage, sacrifice, and defiance intertwined as one, and she would wield them all, no matter the cost. Lyora Selwyn, 18th, hesitated at the edge of the battlements, blue eyes wide with fear and loyalty, golden hair plastered to her face by the storm. "Be careful," she whispered. Ilara only nodded, tightening her grip on the glowing sigils that danced across her fingers. Every magical incantation she had learned, every ounce of courage and defiance, now converged into a single, desperate strategy. The wraith advanced with terrifying speed, and for the first time the kingdom's hatred seemed inconsequential. Only survival and the impossible hope of victory mattered. The first clash erupted like thunder. Dark tendrils of the wraith collided with Ilara's shields of light, sparks and energy dancing in a storm of fury. The battlements shook, stone cracking under the force of wills locked in battle. Ilara felt exhaustion clawing at her muscles, yet she refused to yield. Every law she had broken, every expectation she had defied, culminated in this moment of pure, unrelenting courage. The kingdom's fate no longer rested in its rulers or guards. It rested solely on the girl it had never welcomed. For a moment, everything paused. The wraith recoiled, crimson eyes narrowing as if recognizing the unyielding resolve radiating from her. Ilara's chest heaved, rain mixing with sweat, cloak soaked and torn, yet she pressed forward. One final surge of magic, born from grief, defiance, and love for a kingdom that had never loved her, surged through her. The darkness screamed, twisted, and writhed, but it could not withstand the intensity of a heart unbound by rules, free to fight for what truly mattered. The wraith dissipated into shadows, leaving a silence so profound it felt sacred. The city lay battered but intact, a testament to defiance, courage, and sacrifice. Ilara, drenched and exhausted, stood among broken battlements, green eyes reflecting both triumph and sorrow. The kingdom she had saved might never love her, might never welcome her, Yet she had proven that strength and heart could defy even the deepest darkness. Lyora Selwyn, 18th, approached cautiously, offering silent acknowledgement of what had been endured and achieved. Together, they faced the dawn of a kingdom forever changed, but one that would never fully recognize its savior. The kingdom stirred with cautious life, but Alara felt no belonging within its walls. She walked along the high cliffs overlooking the sea, waves crashing below, salt spray in her tangled black hair. Her green eyes, fierce yet reflective, traced the horizon where sky and water merged. Every cobblestone she had once run across, every torchlit street she had defied, belonged to a world that had neither welcomed nor understood her. Yet, in that isolation, she found a strange peace. Courage had carried her farther than rules ever could, and the kingdom, ungrateful and blind, would never erase what she had achieved. Lyora Selwyn, 18, approached cautiously along the cliff's edge, her blonde hair catching the last rays of sun, blue eyes wary yet soft with understanding. "I wish we could have been celebrated together," she whispered. Alara's gaze met hers, a faint smile curling her lips. Recognition need not come from the kingdom. It could come from those who had witnessed her courage. No law or crown could diminish what she had achieved, and in that acknowledgement, a quiet legacy took root, a tale of defiance, sacrifice, and unyielding heart. She looked back once, at the distant towers of the capital, smoke faint in the morning haze. The kingdom would rebuild, and the people would speak in whispers of the girl who had defied every law, who had fought shadows unseen, who had sacrificed endlessly for a realm that would never recognize her. But recognition was never the point. Her heart, unbound and fierce, had shaped destiny. The wraith was gone, the streets would heal, and she would endure, alone, resolute, unbowed, carrying her triumph like a torch in the dark. The horizon called to her, a promise of journeys yet untaken. She stepped forward, boots crunching over jagged rocks, cloak streaming behind like a shadow of defiance. Every step away from the kingdom was a step toward freedom, toward a world where courage, not conformity, defined value. She had broken every rule, defied every expectation, and saved a kingdom that would never love her. And now the story belonged entirely to her, unscripted, unbound, and eternal. As the sun rose fully, illuminating the cliffs and endless sea, she paused to look back one final time. Her heart carried the echoes of the kingdom, of Master Oren, of Lyora, of every life touched by her courage. Though unrecognized, her deeds would ripple through time, an invisible legacy, a legend whispered in shadows. The girl who had broken every rule now belonged to no one but herself, and the world ahead stretched vast and waiting, full of promise, peril, and unbroken light.